am Nadia Kina coming to you again as the Melanin Gifted movie critic, and I am here with Jairo Cuevas. Did I pronounce that right?
Almost. It's Jairo, but that's close enough.
Jairo. See, I'm always appreciative when people correct the way their names are said, because names are so important to us, right? They are exactly who we are. So, and it's something that we have to normalize in our communities. So I'm very appreciative of you coming to spend time with us. I am interested in the whole broad spectrum of your filmography, but let's begin with who you are and what you're working in right now.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Jairo Cuevas, and currently I am part of the creative content department at Pixar. So I help film and edit a lot of the making of videos. So like if you buy a Blu-ray, or even now they're going on Disney Plus, there's like just the extra features of like how the movie was made. Maybe it's about animation, maybe it's about sound design, maybe it's about color correction, maybe it's about the editor. Like we just kind of cover whatever we can, and then we edit pieces together, and then we put them on the Blu-ray. So that's sort of like the short synopsis of sort of what I do there. And then on the side, when I can, I just, I work on little projects here and there that I direct on the side whenever I have time. I'm pretty busy with my full-time job, but there's pockets of time here and there where I can kind of write and direct little short films here and there. So that's kind of my life.
That's exciting, though. I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there that could say that they don't know the impact of Pixar, the way the movies were brought forward, the empathy that's brought into them, and the storylines that they kind of underwhelm. Is that a big thing in the company? Like the idea of making sure that the story encompasses the societal mirrors of today?
Well, I wish I could talk about that in terms of, because I'm not really part of the actual filmmaking process. I kind of capture the filmmakers making the movie, so I'm not in it the way they are. I only kind of capture like an hour meeting here or an hour meeting there. But I think that by just watching the movies, you probably get that sense that they do care a lot about community and also just emotions and what does it mean to just have these feelings and go off of that. I mean, Inside Out, right? Just all these emotions, what it's like to be jealous or to be angry or to be happy. They tap into so many things that we as a society just kind of feel. And then on an individual level, you could just be like, oh, I've been angry before, or I've been happy before. So I think all the films are just so much fun. And it's always great to just watch all the filmmakers do their thing, whether it's the story artist, or the director, or a layout artist, or an animator. They're always just like working together to make the best film possible. So it's just fun to really like capture all that stuff, and then just like from our perspective, make the best making of documentary to showcase just how talented they are and just how much work they put into everything they do. It's fun to just work there and just follow them around. Hopefully they don't get annoyed by me. I'm always like with a camera in their face, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So I don't know. It's fun. It's fun for me. I don't think they're annoyed. Hopefully they're not annoyed.
No, I don't think they are. I've seen a few of them because I have Disney Plus, and they're great.
Awesome.
Because you get to really capture, you really capture what goes into that. And that's the creative process. How do you think that creative process plays into your own personal films that you've been making?
Oh, that's a good question. I think because working at Pixar, you're pretty much surrounded by a bunch of filmmakers. So it's basically like film school. So it's fun to just see how the movie starts and then how it evolves. And for me, it's really good to see that, because as an outsider, before working at Pixar, it's easy to be like, oh, well, they make it look so easy. It's probably like they push a button and the movie's made. But then now that I'm in it, like in there, and again, not being fully part of the filmmaking process, but just documenting the filmmakers do their thing. Like it's a lot of work. Like they rewrite the script, and then they draw storyboards, and then they redraw storyboards. And then, we're allowed to watch the different versions of the movie. So like as a company, we're invited to watch like maybe the first cut of the movie, and then, a year later, maybe the second cut, and so on. And it's cool to just see the progress of the storytelling, and also just to see just how hard they work. And so I've taken that into my own personal stuff. Like, yeah, maybe you could write one draft of the script and you can go shoot it. But like, well, why don't I just give myself more time and keep rereading the script and then what else is in my script that I can maybe enhance or take out. What can I just rewrite? It's just so fascinating to be like, okay, yeah, sure, I can take this one script and shoot that. Or what if this? Or what if that? What if this? What if that? Like, it's just like, and then at one point, when do you stop writing and when do you start shooting it? For Hazard, I wrote it in about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, and I would always keep changing the character's name or how the backstory. I would change the backstory of the villain, and it was just like, oh my gosh, nonstop. And that's just like a short little 5-minute project, right? Like features are 90 minutes to 100 minutes long, so that's just like incredible what the artists do. And so I'm always inspired by seeing all the filmmakers do what they do and then go, right, how can I do that with my work? And how can I just rewrite and rewrite and rewrite? And then once we get in the editing process, okay, re-edit. It can be very tedious, but I find it so incredibly, I'm just always so joyful by just the process of filmmaking. And it just makes me so happy. I think I'm so happy by my family, my wife and my daughter, my dogs make me so happy. And then on the professional side, like I get that same joy when I'm making a movie, when I'm just directing and writing. Like it's just so much fun. And I love being able to just work at a company that also allows me that time and allows me to just be part of that process and to watch it unfold. It's just like so magical and wonderful. And hopefully I'm able to do that with my own little shorts on the side.
I feel like that process with Pixar kind of played into maybe your new film, A Normal Conversation, where that kind of that mentality of what's going on right now and trying to kind of encompass it into a short. Can you tell us a little more about what inspired that and how you feel that came out?
Yeah, man, A Normal Conversation. So, as I'm sure you're well aware, gun violence, right? It's everywhere. And I think that I was just sort of starting to feel kind of just emotionally overwhelmed by it all. A Normal Conversation, we shot that before COVID happened. And before then, like there were just so many shootings, like either schools or just stores, just wherever you went, it just seemed like it was nonstop. And so I think when I started to just kind of take all that information, I just kind of boiled it down to, well, my wife is a teacher and like there's so many school shootings. I wanted to just write from the perspective of 2 high schoolers who it just happened to them, right? And they want to talk about their feelings and what it feels like to not just be a kid, but to be a kid who has to be aware of just maybe being shot at. And I also took how I feel. Like there was a time when before COVID, I'd go to the movies, but I would feel very, very like aware of my surroundings in terms of like, am I in danger? Like, is someone just going to come into this theater and do something that has happened before? And so I took those thoughts and those feelings of just feeling like very paranoid, very justified, I think, too, because it could, it has happened and it could happen again. And so I just kind of took those emotions and those feelings and put them into these 2 characters. And I remember when I first wrote the script, there was no tension between them. Like they both agreed with each other because that's just how I feel. It's like when I think about a subject in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, Hyro, of course. Oh yeah. But then I remembered, well, in movie form, like there needs to be some sort of drama, some sort of tension. So that's when I thought, okay, there's one character who is against it and one character for it. And then what is that going to be like? And what is the person who's against it going to say? And what's the counter argument to the person who's, for gun, not necessarily for gun violence, but for just owning a gun and the rights to being able to own a gun. But that also is just so dangerous. So then what about the person who doesn't believe in gun ownership or just doesn't believe in having guns at all? Wherever people stand, my stance is pretty much like, I am against guns. Like, why do we even have these things out there? If it's taking people's lives, like, why just have them around? If it's easier to just make it so that people can live their lives and be alive, then maybe let's just focus on that. And so A Normal Conversation is really just about me just like working on my own thoughts and ideas of how I feel about gun violence and how could we get to a place where we don't have to live in fear anymore. But then, I don't know, have you seen the movie? It's played at a few festivals. It's not really here or there out there online yet. But the way it ended is kind of like, here we go again. with a little line at the end, because I don't think as a nation we've solved it. I mean, I remember during COVID, I didn't hear much about gun violence. I think we were all just locked away in our houses. And then once people started to go out again, like it started ramping up again. And I was like, oh, there it is. There it is again. Like we haven't done anything yet. And COVID maybe just put a pause on it. But now it's out in the world and there's people losing their lives again. And it's kind of meaningless. Like that shouldn't be happening. And yet it still keeps happening. And so for me, No More Conversation is just about two kids having a conversation about how it's just nonstop and how it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It kind of feels like it's not being addressed at all. And it's good that it's popping up in these short films like yours.
Thanks.
The Oscar winner for animation last year addressed it as well. And I think it's good that it addresses the empathetic view and the personal view of people. Which brings me to the idea that filmmakers are essentially, at least good filmmakers are essentially artists that reflect what's going on in society today and how that's transitioned. How do you feel your past plays into that? Like, how does it create an idealistic view that you play off of in order to create your films and write your films?
Oh man, these are great questions. My past, so I have a feature as well called One Long Day that's playing at film festivals. I've played a few and we're waiting to hear back for more, but that one is about a jaded ex-teacher who has one day to find her roommate's missing dog or she'll be kicked out of the house. But it's also based on how I felt about, and I don't think, it's not like a very political movie. It's more about how I felt like my life was going nowhere. And I was just feeling like, okay, well, it looks like I can't work at a place that I want to work at, or I'm not getting to do my movies that I want to do, and I was just feeling very sad. And so that movie is really about someone who's very, very angry, like super angry at life and super, super sad. Now, I'm not a teacher. I said my wife's a teacher, and the idea is kind of based on something that kind of happened to her, but also I kind of had to exaggerate it. But that movie is really based on my feelings about how I felt about the world. And, I went to school, I graduated from college, and yet somehow, like, I remember being told, like, you go to college, you do what you need to do, and you'll be able to get the kind of job that you want. And I think a lot of people, they go to college because they go, okay, this is the next step in life. And then from here, I should be able to work a job that's centered around my degree. But then, like, that doesn't really happen. I'm not the only one that it's happened to. And it's very, very disheartening to go and follow your dreams and be told, okay, if I do this, and this will happen. If I work really, really hard, then this will happen. And yet, like, going to college and, staying up late, studying, doing your tests, getting good grades, doesn't guarantee that you're going to have that life that you thought you were going to have right after you graduate. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And what ends up happening is you come out of school with a lot of debt, and you have to try to find a job that, even if it doesn't make you happy, you need to do it to pay your bills. There are a lot of people out there who aren't lucky enough to, like, be able to work the jobs that they want to work. And sometimes it just takes a while. And I think for me, it just took a very, very long time to get to where I am today. I had a lot of support. My wife was very supportive for a long, long time. She was the person who financially took care of us. Like, I would freelance here and there and make some money, but she was the one who was really consistent with work because she was a teacher. But also, teachers don't get paid a lot of money and they don't get a lot of respect. And so there was a lot on her shoulders for a long, long time. And I just kind of felt like, I feel like there are other people living this kind of life where they're just kind of meandering, not because they wanted to, but just because that's just the way that the cards were dealt to them. And even though they did all the right stuff. And so for me, like, I just think back to what it was like to after college to feel really, really sad and really, really depressed, and then just kind of play into that as much as I could. And One Long Day is really, really much about my past and how I felt really angry and really sad. And also learning that I had to let go of that, not necessarily like just go, okay, forget it. I think it's okay to be angry. I think it's okay to be sad. It's not okay to take that anger and be very mean to others, physically, emotionally. that's never the right thing to do. And so One Long Day is really about someone who's really angry, but then realizing, okay, well, how do I turn that anger into a positive? And the only way to do that is to realize that what you're doing is wrong. And by understanding and admitting that you've done something wrong, then maybe you learn, okay, well, then how do I make it right? And it's through like this filter within your own body of taking something wrong and then filtering it out into a good way by being nicer to people and by realizing, okay, well, instead of just moping around, what can I do that is the opposite of that? And how do I turn it around? And it starts with like your brain. I think of like, you just have to think positive thoughts and realize like, okay, yeah, it didn't work out, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to. I just have to keep working at it and we'll see how that goes. Did I answer your question?
No, you did. You did.
Okay.
Because it reflects, again, that your films are very personal, and that's great. So we're going to go a little farther back because I read that
I was a baby.
I read that Escape was actually came from your first horror film experience. Is that true?
From my first, what do you mean? Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what that means.
No, so I read an article that said that you had watched Carrie when you were young, and that scared you so much that you didn't watch horror films. And I actually connected with that because I don't watch horror films at all. I can't do it to myself. I can't. And it's funny too, because my editor's like, oh, we have a film to review and then a director to interview. And I'm like, I don't do horror films. And he's like,
I don't do scary movies. I'm sorry. I understand.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about why you ventured back into horror films after your experience with Carrie?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think, oh man, horror films take a while. Even if they're short films, there's either gore or there's special effects. All that stuff takes time. Before Escape, I think I was making little like comedic shorts. So with comedic shorts, it's just like a lot of talking, like what you and I are doing, right? You set up a camera, we're talking, then you talk, and then maybe something dramatic happens, and then somehow we figure out a way to resolve it. And there's really no special effects needed. This could be a movie right here. Like we could have some drama, like you could be mad at me for something, and I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And you're like, that's okay, we're friends again. In the end, no special effects needed. It's just us talking. But with horror films, like, with Escape, there were some special effects. I don't know if you saw it because you say you don't watch horror films, but there's, special effects with the glasses being put on that we had to like put like a world within the sunglasses, and that takes time. And then you have to just create some sort of mood, and the music has to be just right. But because I was making these short little comedic films or even like short dramatic films, I had been missing making a horror film. It had been a few years since I had made one. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's time to do it again. I think that since the last time I made one, which was probably years ago, it can be a little scarring. You're like, oh, that took forever to make. I don't want to ever do another horror film again. And then you're like, oh, I think I'm ready. Again to do that. And I always just think back to Carrie. Like, I really love Carrie. That was the first horror film that I remember seeing as a little kid. I don't think my parents should have allowed me to watch Carrie. I have a daughter now. I'm not going to let her watch Carrie until she's like 50. Okay, now you can watch horror films. But I think I was like, I don't remember, 8 or 9. I don't know. I was pretty young. I don't think I shouldn't have been watching. I think I remember like sleeping on my parents' floor next to their bed because I was so scared. But every time I think about making a horror film, I think back to what it was like to watch that movie. And so I try to take the essence of what little baby Hyro was feeling when he watched Carrie. I just pretty much just scared, like, right, just get out of my mind and like, oh my God, is that real? Like, am I watching a documentary? Like, is Carrie like a documentary? And so like I try to take that into these little horror films that I make. And with Escape, I really just tried to make a very, very scary film based around the idea of like video games, right? Like you could argue, right? You could say that like video games to a certain point might influence how we interact in the world. And so I just kind of wanted to blend the two together of how video games can kind of warp your mind a little bit. And I just really much like the idea of like, what if these sunglasses could like take you to another world, but then add a supernatural element to it and blend that horror and bring that into the real world. Because that's sort of how I felt Carrie was. I just like, oh, Carrie is so real that this must be a real thing that happened to her. Obviously, as you get older, you're like, no, it's fake. But when you're a little kid, like everything just seems so real to you. I don't know if you've had that experience before. You've watched something, you're like, oh, like Iron Man, like people think, like there are kids who think Iron Man is a real person, but then, you know, Robert Downey Jr. takes off his helmet and like they're like, oh, it's just an actor. Okay, whatever. Like he can't really like fly around with his armor or anything like that. So I don't know. I really just try to think of like what it was like to be a kid and to really think, oh, that must be real. And then how do I make it so if someone watches a horror film that I have directed, how can I make it so that they think it's real? And if they do that, then hopefully they find it scary.
That actually brings me to my next important question. Well, I think it's self-important. So it kind of goes into the idea that the genre of horror and sci-fi is kind of across the board, right? There's not really an element where you can say, well, there's not a necessity for BIPOC to make sure that there's representation, but there is. We've seen that with Jordan Peele, right? That bringing in that essence of BIPOC stories actually changes the dynamics of these genres. How important do you think that is?
I think it's super important because if you just see like for me growing up, I'll just say it because I don't know some other eloquent way of saying it. If you just see like a generic white actor, right? Like eat hot dogs, eat an apple, like on screen or in any kind of horror film or any kind of film, like then you're like, okay, well, I mean, I grew up eating tamales, you know, and just this, I'm 100%, you know, Latinx, Mexican. But what I would see on screen was not representation of how I lived my life. Yet I also assimilated into it because that's all I knew from watching movies of like, oh, like this is sort of the American life. But then if you start getting more actors and more storytellers who have a different culture, who come from a different country and are here in America telling their stories, then all of a sudden you are educated and learning, oh, there's more to life than just hot dogs and baseball. There's other kinds of sports, other kinds of food, other kinds of language. And that's very, very important. And I've been trying to do that with my films, but unfortunately, like I can't pay like a casting agent. Like I'm very low budget. I would love to have more representation in my films. I'd love to have more people of color. So the best way that I can approach it is, okay, well, I'm Mexican. You know, how can I put my Latinx Mexicanness into my films? Even though, like, I mean, Joanna from Hazard is white, right? But she's saying these words that are written by a Latinx, you know, director and writer. So there's a part of me that's in that movie, in her language, in that dialogue. And I'm always trying to figure out how can I just put in these little details that are kind of me, even though these people don't look like me on the screen right now, but hopefully someday I would love to be able to put more people of color in the projects that I do. With One Long Day, like I was able to do that a little bit with Deborah. It was cool to start adding some Spanish into my feature because I've never actually really done that with one of my shorts. So it was cool to like write little things here and there that I, you know, would say when I was growing up or just now in my own life, teaching my daughter Spanish. Ever since I moved out from my parents' house, like I don't say it as much as I used to. So part of me is starting to forget it, but I'm always trying to like really hard to keep that language going. And it's great because now that my daughter is born, I'm like, oh, I talk to her in Spanish and it's all coming back to me again, which is really, really nice and really, really fun. And so like I'm trying to do as much of that as I can in these features and these projects and these shorts that I'm making. But overall, I think like it's important to have representation from just all walks of life, because then when you introduce that to like a kid, they're going to have so many questions and they're going to learn so much, because then they're not just watching one type of movie, they're watching different types of movie and they're watching different types of people with different types of language. And they go, what language is that? What language is that? What kind of food is that? What kind of fruit is that? Like, where is that location? Like, I want to go visit that place. And it's so good to be able to see someone who looks like you, because then you also just feel so represented and so heard. And it's so important to have that, to just know that there's so many types of people out there and so many different types of stories that get me told. And also so many types of ways to tell that story. I think like here in America, we have like a certain type of structure, like in like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. But there are other movies from other countries that don't even have that. They might not even have like 3 acts. It might just be 1 act. There might be movies out there that are just shot in like 1 shot, like there's no cuts. There's movies out there that might not even have music. Like it's great to see different types of films from different countries because their editing style, the music that's made or not made, the sound design, everything is so different. And that all comes from the way these different filmmakers were raised and the types of movies that they saw growing up. It's all just so wonderful to start seeing more of that here.
And that's a good point that you made. We've seen Hispanic, Latinx actors grow. We've seen Asian actors grow, Black actors. We've seen all those dynamics grow recently, and that's wonderful. But it really makes a difference when the person who's directing the film is BIPOC, or the producer that is funding the film is BIPOC. All those dynamics are important, and it's good that you point and say, I add small things so that people can see it, because that representation does matter. And brings us back to Pixar, who is also doing those types of things in their events. And I'm sure you've seen it filming the directors, how the directors have transcended, how they kind of incorporate more and reflect more of what America looks like, right?
Yeah, totally.
So that's wonderful. Before I let you go, I want to see what you're going to be doing in the future. And what film, I know San Diego International Film Festival is coming up. Is your film One Long Day in that?
I don't think so. It's only been in a few film festivals, so I'm waiting to hear back from more. We'll see how it goes. It's just nice that it's just done, to be honest. Like the bonus is whether or not it gets into film festivals, and we've been lucky enough to get in a few. But I've also kind of at the same time moved on from it. Like I am responsible for submitting it and all that, and so I'm keeping track on how it's doing. But I'm also like, okay, what are some other projects that I want to kind of work on? And so there's a few like short little animated projects that I've just been kind of writing. Some that are being storyboarded. It's all like on the side, nothing to do with Pixar, but it's all on the side, being inspired by what I see. And then with these little animated things that I'm working on, they're very early concepts. I am putting more of who I am, like more of that Mexican side into it, whether it be toys or language, style. I'm trying to think more of that, because with animation, there are people out there who can do certain types of drawing or certain types of animation that gives me more to play with than if I just do live action. So we'll see what happens. Maybe none of those will come to fruition. I don't know. I'm just having a fun time, just like experimenting, writing when I can. I'm so very, very lucky and so happy with where I am. And it took a long, long time to get here. It took a lot of struggle, a lot of hard work, a lot of support. And so like whatever happens from here to when I pass, I'm just living a bonus life now. I can't complain. I just can't. And I hope that I can help others however I can, because the struggle is real. And I know part of it is like the struggle allows you to really like enjoy once you're at the point where you're not struggling anymore. It's nice to be in that spot. And it doesn't mean that I have it easy. There's still a lot of work. There's still deadlines, but like I wake up very happy. And I used to not wake up very happy, and I know there's people out there who might not be waking up that way. And I just want them to know if they just keep at it and keep working hard and share your emotions and your feelings with other people, like that helps so much. That'll get you to where you're trying to get to. And you just might not get there the way you thought. So just embrace surprises.
Well, we're so excited to see what else you bring us. Especially if it's horror, I won't watch it. But
you won't watch it. You're like, I totally understand. No worries. But I hope people watch Hazard. It's online now. It's on my website.
Yes.
JairoCuevas.com. You can watch it there. But yeah, thank you so much. This has been so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you. And I can't wait to see a normal conversation. I'm super excited about finding that. Hopefully it's online. Is that on your website as well?
It's not online yet. It's going to play at San Francisco Indie Film Fest. I think in a few days. I can email you. Do I have your email? I can email you the link, or I can text it to you.
That'd be great.
But I plan to release it online like around February. I think by that time it'll be done with film festival stuff. So
Well, we're so excited to see you, some more from you, and
thanks.
hopefully, one long day you makes it in the San Diego International Film Festival, because then all of San Diego can watch it.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. You're awesome. Thank you so much. Great questions.